Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The Epstein files are still rolling in. At midnight last night, the DOJ decided to upload their third big collection of documents, flouting, we should note, the deadline of last Friday under the law. There wasn't like a, window period where they could upload the files. They had a deadline. But this now brings the total number of files released to over 30,000. And the main impression as folks try to make sense of it all, including in our newsroom, is that it feels like once again we're being kind of sprayed with a fire hose of sewage. I mean, it's full of mistakes and omissions, questionable redactions, even salacious allegations from a tip line. Some documents have been disappearing from the DOJ's webpage after they were published, and Trump's people seem to be happy to make a mess of it all. In fact, that sort of seems like the point. I mean, keep in mind the context here, right? They hate the law that Congress passed, forcing them to release the files. They fought it tooth and nail. They hate the concept of transparency. And Trump has been very clear that he would prefer to protect people. Well, some and not others.
I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein many years ago, and they're, highly respected bankers and lawyers and others.
Won't someone think of the bankers and lawyers? As congresspeople from both sides have been saying, protecting a bunch of bankers or lawyers because they're highly respected is violating both the spirit and the letter of the law. Again, you can disagree with the law, but Donald Trump signed that into law. And despite all that, there are some really valuable pieces of information the public is learning from the files once we kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Today, for instance, we learned that during Trump's first term, this is back in January 2020, an assistant U.S. attorney wrote an internal email about a review of flight records as part of the government's case against Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, who has subsequently been transferred to a low-security prison after talking to Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. And this is what the email says. For your situational awareness, wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case, the email states. In other words, during a period in which crimes were being committed. The email added that Trump had been on at least 8 Epstein flights. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the only 2 listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old redacted. That seems like a justified redaction there. Remember what Trump said last year on social media, quote, "I was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island"? That appears to be patently false, right? We also learned over the weekend that Epstein had 10 alleged co-conspirators. This is probably the biggest piece of news to come out of these documents today. So in another email, this one from 2019, the day after Jeffrey Epstein was charged with child sex trafficking by the feds, an FBI employee asked a colleague for, quote, an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. Now, this email also shows the incompetent or possibly malign nature of DOJ's redaction efforts, or at least as yet unexplained.